Hey, Battle Bill, here with another video, getting into some double Ultra Beast battles. In today's video, we got some open Great League battles where we use both the Guzzlord and Buzzwole for some success in getting our elo and climbing elo. Now, with this team comp recently, in one of the most recent events, we finally received a special research that gave us access to Guzzlord at Great League CP level without having to trade. We also received another Buzzwole, might be our third Buzzwole if you were able to do the Go Fest over the summer and one of the other events, and I decided to pair these two mons with a Frostlass lead because Frostlass Ghost typing covers Guzzlord's fighting weakness and Frostlass's ice typing covers Buzzwole's flying weakness, and I had a ton of success with this team and a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. I have a collection of battles to show you the ins and the outs of the team comp and how well this team can do against a lot of the meta staples, especially the new ones with the Noctowl Lantern core that has been so present this season. So if you're excited to see more of these battles, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's jump right into them. Speaking of that Lantern and Noctowl core, we have our Guzzlord lined up with the Lantern, and this is a fantastic matchup for our Guzzlord because we resist literally all the damage that the Lantern could possibly throw. All the electric and water damage is resisted by Guzzlord's Dragon typing. They come back in with an Altaria, we throw a Dragon Claw, almost take it out, get a Powder Snow through, and that Lantern's all but done, especially with our 1 shield to 0 shield advantage there. Getting to the next match, we have a Frostlass on a Galarian Stunfisk lead. This is not the most ideal lead in the world just because Guzzlord doesn't really counter this, and our only real good answer for Galarian Stunfisk on this team comp is the Buzzwole. So the way I like to play this out is I want to play out the 1 shield scenario in hopes that they will shield and I will also, match their shield. So I'm pretty sure in this situation, I go for it, yes, and then I hope that I can throw an Avalanche, get their shields, they then take me out, but they end up swapping into Trevenant, which was a super odd play on their part. I've thrown Avalanche. This is a bit of a panic throw because of the snipe they attempted, and then I line up Trevenant with another. Well, this is Guzzlord's another one of its best matchups and one of Trevenant's hardest walls in the game, similar to Lantern in the form of the Guzzlord, because again, that Dark and Dragon typing, Dragon resisting the grass and Dark resisting all the ghost damage. You can see how little the Shadow Ball did to our Guzzlord. They come back in with the Altaria. We get some additional damage off because we were able to overfarm a bit. We get their final shields, but we're not sitting in the most ideal situation because our Frostlass is almost dead. So we cannot come back in with Frostlass and try to throw an Avalanche because we are just short of the second one, and we panic through one at the Trevenant, even though it did get us a shield. So I'm pretty sure it was going to work fine regardless. Our opponent then tries to swap to catch a move because their Altaria is their last mon left. It does not work for them. They end up coming in, getting countered down. They do get off a Rock Slide, but we're going to be able to get off 2 superpowers. Will both of these do enough damage with Altaria's flying typing resisting? Yes, it will. We throw back to back. The first superpower debuffs the second one. Will this take out? Yes, it does. We were trying to swap into Frostlass for a quick Powder Snow snipe in case they did survive, but they did not. Getting to this next match, we have another Dragon Flyer on us, but a much better matchup. And they then save swap into Mantine, and we match with a very awkward matchup in the form of Guzzlord. We could not bring in a Buzzwole here because of the flying damage that Mantine can deal with the fast attack of Wing Attack, especially with that being buffed, in Season 13. But us coming in Guzzlord wasn't ideal just because of Mantine's water typing, because of the fact that it has access to Ice Beam. That's a problem, not its water typing. That would be a positive for our Guzzlord, our Dragon type Guzzlord. We are able to at least get a shield even though we lose alignment, and our only choice here is to come in with the Frostlass and Powder Snow farm all the way down. We're fully expecting the Bubble Beam spam us, which essentially just gives our Frostlass more farm because no matter what happens here, we are going to then swap out even with all this double resisted, even though our attack is double debuffed. We're fully expecting the Dragonite to not come in. It ends up being a Medicham, which then tempts me to not swap out because we can go for some massive super effective Shadow Ball damage even though it is double debuffed, and you can see how hard that still hits. We go for an Avalanche here. This even double debuff should hopefully take out. It just barely doesn't, but the Medicham stays in. We swap, we have to shield because we know it's a Psychic, and we want to preserve our Buzzwole because a Psychic would have essentially one-shot us, and the Dragonite just has too much health left for our Frostlass to deal with in its current state. So we have to play out what looks like a bad matchup because of that flying typing against our fighting type, but Dragonite's mostly doing dragon damage. We're aiming for a counter down even though resisted, and it works out. The Medicham comes in, we counter that down even with their shield. Buzzwole, holy Christ, Buzzlord, Buzz, whatever I said, Buzzwole is able to beat the Psychic type and the Flying type. And this is what happens when I don't get out consistent videos. My commentating just gets worse and worse and deteriorates over time. And Guzzlord and Buzzwole, I guess Guzz, I feel like that's a fair mix-up if I'm being 100% honest with myself here. But regardless, getting into the next matchup, we have a very scary mirror matchup between Frostlass and Frostlass. We go for the nuke on the second one after pulling off the bait. It does not work, so we have to save our shield, but then they decide to nuke. We're expecting them to want to swap out and try and catch whatever move we throw. We're also worried about there potentially being a Noctowl to catch our Shadow Ball that we almost definitely need to throw immediately because we're afraid of being Powder Snow down, but we end up winning out the 2 shield with just barely a little bit left of our health and HP on our Frostlass. The opponent then comes in with the Swampert and Mud Shots us down, which is not super ideal because at the Great League level, the earthquakes that the Swampert can deal to our Guzzlord are going to hit hard, even though the Dragon type will resist Swampert's water typing. So we need to come in with Buzzwole, farm up a bunch, and then essentially force out 2 Hydro Cannons from our opponent to try and catch a second one like we just did. Now we need to throw right away though, because if they get to an earthquake, it will take out Guzzlord's remaining health. But this top tier play of catching the Hydro Cannon gives me my best potential chance to win because their last mon in the back is Venusaur. That Swampert could have been terrible news and essentially swept my back line if not played correctly. Our Guzzlord though is going to be able to take out the remaining health of the Venu. We're going to get off this Dragon Claw, and GG's for that match. All comes down to that huge catch that we were able to pull off. Getting into this next one, we have Frostlass on an Azu lead. You might be wondering to yourself, Battle Bill, this team is triple weak to Azu. Azu beats Frostlass. Azu slaughters Guzzlord and Buzzwole. But you know what? That Frostlass matchup is not all that bad because we can land Shadow Balls and these Powder Snows add up. We just want to be careful to not let our Frostlass get one shot, which we almost do there. But Frostlass, I guess good enough IVs matter. We survive the bubble right after, and then on the next bubble, we're able to get off in the middle of it before the damage is dealt. We're able to get off a Shadow Ball there that almost takes out. We lose the lead, but honestly, that kind of lost lead where Azu slaughters our entire team, and we practically took out the Azumarill's majority of its health, we will take that in that scenario. They then pivot after they see our Buzzwole. They pivot into their Sableye. We then pivot into our Guzzlord, and their last mon is a Skarmory, and this match, no matter how hard we try to play out of it, is essentially GG's because there's a Skarmory that is lined up with our Buzzwole in the back. Or is it? Can Guzzlord clutch and do enough damage, potentially get off the crunch debuff? The Buzzwole in the back is mighty healthy. We're going to save the shield. They throw a Sky Attack. We don't let ourselves get farmed down. There actually might be a chance. Our biggest play is to make sure we throw this lunge to debuff the Skarmory and not let our opponent catch. Us debuffing is huge there because we're able to counter down before they're able to air slash us all the way down. The Azu comes in, throws a bubble. Buzzwole survives with 1 HP, big superpower lands, and that is GG's for a match that looked like there was no outcon between the lead, the swamp, and the closing matchup. Pretty much bad in every situation, minus the Sableye on the Guzzlord in that match. Getting into this next one, we have a good situation. We have a Sableye lined up with our Guzzlord. We just need to make sure we call the return, which we do, so we can get greedy and over farm. We cannot Dragon Tail all the way down without them potentially getting off another return there. So we have to throw the Dragon Claw there. We're waiting to see what they decide to do when they come back in with the Medicham. Sorry, like I said, it's been a bit since I've shoutcasted, so now my throat is getting dry. We throw a crunch. Our Guzzlord is tanking all these counters, even though they're super effective. We get the crunch debuff, which is clutch, because when we throw another Dragon Claw, it forces their first shield. And honestly, considering the circumstances, we're in a good spot here. We had won the lead, we kept alignment, and we did a huge chunk of damage to their Medicham. This all falls down to what their last mon could potentially be, and it ends up being an Alolan Ninetales. But the one positive here is this Alolan Ninetales does not have Charm. Can we play our way out of it? Alolan Ninetales for this entire team comp, especially with Charm, is the biggest core breaker for this team. Powder Snow is also a bit tough, but Frostlass can play a little bit out of that one, a bit better. Whereas also with Powder Snow here, Buzzwole's not taking a bunch of super effective damage. Also, I'm pretty sure I threw a lunge and they didn't shield. Did that happen? Was that like a partial throw on my part? Either way, we're going for the superpower. We do take out the Alolan Ninetales. They decide to not preserve it, but they're able to counter us all the way down. The Medi has too much energy. They're going to get off a Psychic here. That is going to take out the Frostlass's remaining health, and we are going to lose this match. So even though it was a good lead, good swap, Alolan Ninetales, be weary when running this team comp. If you're seeing a bunch of them, that could be one big deterrent and core breaker of the comp. But aside from that, this team has a lot of success against the rest of the Open Great League meta. Getting to this next matchup, we have Frostlass on a Shadow Swampert lead. We want to eat a Hydro Cannon, but what we don't want is for them to catch this Avalanche, which is what they do, which is super unfortunate for us because we have a great answer for this Lantern in the back, but now the Frostlass has no energy. So to make up for all that lost energy, our only goal and our only play con here is to essentially Dragon Tail this Lantern all the way down. And I think the opponent is making a mistake by going straight Surf. I'm pretty sure Thunderbolt is like slightly more DPE, and I have zero intentions of shielding regardless. Maybe they don't get the 3 Thunderbolts though, they get the 3 Surfs. Regardless though, we survived them relatively comfortably, and now we're loaded on energy. Our opponent, recognizing that, does not bring their Swampert back in. They bring in their Noctowl, and we're going to essentially throw as much energy as we possibly can at this Noctowl. So it's good to see it here as much as we want to get rid of that Swampert, but it's better to see it here because we need to keep this Noctowl away from our Buzzwole. We don't want to take that double super effective damage. We then pivot into our Frostlass fast to try and force their energy out, make them stress, panic throw, potentially don't get as much farm as they could have gotten if we would have just stayed in, because with the 2 shield to 1 shield advantage, we really want to let Buzzwole clutch up. They then pivot, automatically panic swap into their Swampert. Then again, if they stay in with their Noctowl is relatively almost dead, so it could have only done so much depending on how much energy it had, and we're pretty confident it has no energy because they threw the Sky Attack at our Frostlass. So we counter the Swampert all the way down. We're almost at 2 superpowers. We throw the first one. This one's going to be huge. It's going to be a bit of a race. We get to the second superpower in time with no shields, with a debuff Buzzwole that would have died to a Sky Attack, and we're able to make our Bug Fighter a Noctowl counter confirmed. Getting into the next matchup, we have another Azu lead. Are we going to be able to play our way out of this one? We're going for the Shadow Ball right away. We just want to make sure we throw on good timing. We do not want to give them any free bubbles because that's going to be huge. Apparently, all the Azus in the world are running Hydro Pump these days because I'm pretty confident I get Hydro Pumped again. But learning from experience, this is not the worst case scenario because of the fact that when we land 2 Shadow Balls, it puts the Azu low enough for our backline to be fine against it. We just want to come in with our Buzzwole, counter all the way down. Our opponent does not pivot. They do not get to another charge move. So as much as Azu could be a huge issue, it does not become too big of a problem there other than it winning the lead for them and giving them very good alignment. They come in with an Altaria. We want to debuff it by throwing the lunge and then come in with our Guzzlord to deal some super effective damage. They then pivot into Sableye, which is not a great pivot for them. So if we play this matchup properly, we don't get baited too hard here, and we're able to call returns, Guzzlord could potentially clutch. Unfortunately, I get baited. I'm not just Battle Bill, I'm also baited Bill for a reason. We go for another Dragon Claw here though. We get the shield. I think our hope is to essentially Dragon Tail this Sableye all the way down if possible and call the bait. That second call was huge. We go for the Dragon Tail farm all the way down. Unfortunately, they survive with 1 HP, so we're forced to use our last shield either way, but our Guzzlord is now loaded on energy. We want to get off this Dragon Claw. It's not going to take out, but it's going to do a good chunk of damage. We need to get to another Dragon Claw, but we're not able to. They're going to land the Sky Attack. It's going to take out our Guzzlord. Can Buzzwole survive and get to a superpower before the Altaria gets to the Sky Attack? And it's able to, going for some resisted fighting damage on their flyer, and Buzzwole counters another flyer. Confirm GG's to the opponents. We see a lot of potential losing matchups throughout this collection of battles where these two, Guzzlord and Buzzwole, are able to pull through. It's highly impressive. Getting to this next matchup, we actually have some alignment in our favor. We have a positive lead. They say swap into Lantern, one of the most popular cores in the Great League meta right now, and this team comp hard aligns against it, especially when they're leading with Frostlass, a Noctowl on the Frostlass, and then they swap into Lantern and we can put our Guzzlord there. We don't need to respect a single move coming from the Lantern. We're going to let it all come through. We're going to overfarm a bit, but not too much because we want to keep some Guzzlord health. We want to make sure the Noctowl is forced to throw energy at us, and we leave with enough where we can deal some fast move damage to the Noctowl and also throw some Dragon Claws or potentially Crunches at it, depending on where our energy's at and how much we're going to survive to. We also potentially want to throw a Crunch here so we can get a debuff. So we do it this time around, knowing we're not going to get the two Dragon Claws. So getting off one Crunch is worth the play, and we're able to land it. Noctowl's practically dead, but they are able to farm us all the way down. But because the Noctowl is practically dead and our last mon is Buzzwole, we're going to let this super effective Shadow Ball, which ends up not being a super effective Shadow Ball, ends up being a regularly neutral Sky Attack, come through. Fully expected Shadow Ball, but because of the 2 shields, they aimed for the bait and it did not work in their favor. They then swap into Reggie and we super RPS them there, because then we have one of Reggie's hardest counters lined up with it in the form of our fighting type, Buzzwole. So on that note, that is a huge collection of battles. I don't know if you were able to see where my elo was throughout the battles in that bottom right corner, but I end up hitting around 2200s because I've been using a huge combination of teams, but I was able to continue to climb after I got my elo with this team. I strongly recommend it. Let me know your thoughts on the team comp, the battles, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. One of these days, I'm going to get this content out consistently, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was useful for you, or at least, at the very least, entertaining. Thank you so much as always. Have a great rest of your day. Preach.